Hey there, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today is going to be the rage bait, the clickbait, the madge-inducing tier list video. And if we go back to 0.3 start with our wonderful YouTube comments, so I can tell that this is going to attract only the most acute players with very good takes and extremely detailed discussion topics and rebuttals, right? So, without further ado, it is the tier list video. Nobody asked for this. I made it anyway. And here we go. So, as you probably saw from the thumbnail, we have maybe some mix-ups from 0.3. Let's start. First, in S tier, and again, we have to be ultra scuffed because tier lists are garbage. And as a player, you should never be following these tier lists. So I don't even know why you're watching this video. Anyway, in S tier, we've got Infernalist and Pathfinder. I don't think this should surprise anybody. Pathfinder is absolutely bonkers this league. So what did they do? If you haven't seen the patch notes, what did they do? Let's scroll down to Pathfinder. Or scroll up. This is the main one, and this is the reason why I am so much for Pathfinder this league. Traveler's Wisdom now requires... That's fine, so it'll take you 4 points. Traveler's Wisdom now grants attribute passive skills offer additional options. 5% increased damage. This is global damage. This means that if you're running spells plus attack damage at the same time, it'll just buff both. This means that if you are running Rocket Man with Pathfinder, which doesn't have an attack or spell tag, this will work. So this is just an overall really interesting build or node. But generally, you do have a lot of attack percent through nodes or through notables, jewels, things like that, to the point where getting 5% increased damage per node is nice, but it's not a huge thing. This is what actually interests me the most, the 5% increased global defenses. There are so few hybrid notables for defenses, and when I say hybrid, I'm referring mostly to evasion plus ES, because those are by far the two best the best combination of defenses you can get. So we have Inner Faith, we have Immaterial, we have Mindful Awareness, and you could maybe include in that list Spectral Ward and Subterfuge Mask. While those don't really buff both at the same time, they do add to the effect of being a hybrid player. So in general, like that's the bulk of those hybrid nodes. There's not a lot. So being able to start Pathfinder and then just every single attribute node that you take now becomes global defenses. You can start to stack a lot of evasion plus energy shield. Each one of these nodes. So it adds up to a lot, and once you get to a point where you feel like you're tanky enough, maybe you have a 80% evasion, like 7,000 energy shield, you say, okay, that's enough. The rest of the points you just put into damage again, and then you just keep buffing your damage. So, and you might say, Glitch, what? I mean, I could just take a notable. I'd get more damage for 3 points versus just spending 3 pathing points. But that's the fun part. Is that now you can do the big circle clock build. The fun circle clock build. I think I already had a POB for this, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I already started. You just do the big circle clock build. You get all 12 jewel sockets. And then you have like 30 levels of points that you can start investing in more specific parts. Like if you're going attack damage, you'll probably end up taking stuff like struck through. If you're going, and then you can pick up stuff like for 3 points, 60% ES, and then 1 more point, 25 int. You can do something similar here with beef. And then you have the next one is a bit further away. But then you can maybe double the effect of your body armor. If you're going pure evasion body armor, then get ES from that body armor. Like, there's generally things like this. And what they did this league, and the reason why jewel sockets are being a little bit more, looked at, is Adorned now has a 150% increased effect of jewel socket passive skills instead of a 100. Again, this has to be corrupted magic jewels. There's two things to this that really, really changed. So one is that now we have a good ascendancy that takes advantage of pathing. Two, we have a better effect of Adorned. And three is that we have double corrupt. Imagine your good magic jewel and you have two implicits on it now. Oh man. This is going to be a spicy league. All the Ultra Giga RMT is going to go some Pathfinder with 150% Adorned, double corrupt, magic jewels, GG. This is going to be a crazy league. So that's why I'm putting Pathfinder in S tier. Just to cherry on top, they get more movement speed while sprinting versus other classes, versus other ascents. So cannot be heavy stunned while sprinting. Sorry, my bad. So you can now just sprint a lot more. There's less monsters in T15 maps now, so you're gonna be sprinting more anyway. If you're still doing overruns, then sprinting between abyss pits, whatever. This ascent is wild. This league is absolutely wild. Next. Wrong tab. We have Infernalist. And why is Infernalist good? Infernalist gets, and I theorycrafted this build on stream. Infernalist is dumb. Infernalist can stack a lot of crit multiplier. It is insane. You can get so much crit multiplier on Infernalist, and that is due to the Ascendancy node, Grinning Immolation. 50% more crit damage bonus. For those that don't know, more, in the context of PoE2, more is a multiplier. Increased is additive with other increased. So when you have 50% more crit damage bonus, this is multiplied for all of the damage, all of the critical damage that you have built. And as you can see, if I unspec this node, minus 31% of my damage. Because I am so heavily invested in crit and crit damage, this is a huge hit. So, why is this one ascend node, and also the fact that you should get a bunch of spirit, you just stack a bunch of spirit, a little bit more ES on top as well. So why is this 50% so impactful? It's because crit is one of the main, is like the big scaler for damage in the end game. Once you're starting to get into that min-max territory, you're pushing like to optimize min-max, all of that stuff. Critical damage bonus is pretty much one of the best ways that you can scale your damage. And then multiplying all of that crit damage bonus that you're building up is just huge. And to give you an example, to give you like really what's happening is that we have Pain Attunement, we have Grinning Immolation, we have martial weapons can roll critical damage bonus as a suffix. You can get Takabas for critical damage bonus on your jewel sockets, and remember that's local. So just from just those three parts, what you're looking at is 1.35 from the martial weapon, multiplied by 1.5 the ascendancy, multiplied by 1.3 Pain Attunement. Before you invest a single point of critical damage bonus anywhere in the tree, like you don't have a single point of critical damage bonus, this is the multiplier that you're applying. And so you get 2.6 times the effect of every 1%. Every crit damage node that you have in the tree, you're getting 2.6 times the effect. And that is why Infernalist gets really crazy. So we're going up to 26, like here in this POB, I have 2647 crit multi. But that's not even all. They buffed Garukins. Garukins is a lineage support, and it used to be that you had to move 20 meters before you can use the skill again. So it wasn't good for fast attacking skills. Now it's just your crit chance is capped at 50%. So, okay. That is a bit of a hit. As you can see, I'll lose a little bit of crit chance, which means I can always just move points into other damage. Like, if I don't need this crit chance, I just take more. I just take other damage. So that's kind of what's going to end up happening. And then now what Garukins does is that it rolls your critical twice. So if you've ever played Baldur's Gate 3, it will effectively roll critical with advantage. Now, if you roll critical twice on both of your dice, you will then get a double crit damage bonus. So this almost 2,700 critical multiplier is going to become a 5,400 crit multi for that one attack. Again, you have to roll that 50% twice, which means it is a 25% chance to roll a double crit. So 25% of the time, I'm going to roll 5,400 damage. 75% of the time, one of the crits will succeed, one of them will fail. I will roll just my normal crit multi, and then 25% of the time, I will hit nothing. Now, here's the kicker. Lucky damage in this game works with the forking crits, or the bifurcated crit is what they call it now, which means that if you have lucky, it will apply to both of your crit chance rolls. So something like the Spring Hair is really good, 20% chance for damage with hits to be lucky. So yeah, it is absolutely wild what they did between Garukins and just not really nerfing anything here. Infernalist, S tier. Next. A tier. We have Ritualist, Amazon, Deadeye. Blood Mage, and Titan. Ritualist is really here for the triple ring socket. Rarity bots, I don't think are ever going to go away. And as long as Ritualist exists with triple rings and buffed amulet and rings for rarity bot purposes, I don't think this is ever going away. One of the other slightly niche things about Ritualist is that on a martial weapon build, you can get +4 with a Sanctify, which with Ritualist then becomes +5 on an amulet. So if you have a lot of currency, you can get effectively +5 skill levels just from the amulet on Ritualist. And again, with a martial build, you can get a lot of added attack damage on your rings with Ritualist. So this is the main reason I'm putting Ritualist here, is for rarity bot purposes and a little bit of niche with solo. Again, if you're playing Ritualist, because the rest of the Ascent is not great, you're probably going to lower your damage a little bit, but the extra ring slot and rarity stacking is always nice. Amazon, incredibly strong. Amazon, Predatory Instincts, 50% more damage against enemies with an open weakness. This ends up at about 50%, 25% more damage against the enemy, which is a very strong multiplier. It's also decent if you have a very strong one-shot build. You can use some smaller skills, like, shocking the enemy and then getting them to that open weakness point, and then hitting them with your big one-shot nuke for Predatory Instincts. So Amazon is amazing. Of course, we have Mystic Harvest. Life Leech recovers based on your elemental damage as well as physical damage. This means that with Essentia Sanguish, where Life Leech applies to ES, you can stack a lot of ES with Amazon, get some Life Leech, and just go crazy. And just infinite Leech as you're damaging stuff, and just always be topped up on ES. It becomes extremely tanky. Next, we have Stalking Panther. Evasion from equipped helmet, gloves, and boots is doubled. Evasion from equipped body armor is halved. And you might say, Glitch, that isn't your body armor one of your best pieces for defenses? And normally you'd be correct, but they buffed 2 things this league. So first, we have Hyres, which I have always been a huge fan of. If you'll have seen me run it in 0.2, in 0.3, and if I can afford it, in 0.4 as well. Hyres now will give you 15 to 25% gain extra as cold damage, but it's also that Hyres doubles the your current evasion. Let me actually sign into my other character just to show you the wording. So evasion is doubled if you have not been hit recently, which obviously if you're going for high evasion, this will generally apply. So what you do is you just stack a bunch of evasion on your other pieces. As you can see, the evasion from high res is not super high at 1,000 for, a decent roll. Actually, it's not even a very good roll. But it's about a 1,000 base evasion. You can add a few rune sockets. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that. And then you run Stalking Panther. So if you have good evasion on gloves, helmet, and boots, now you get double the value of all the evasion there. Hyres gets a small hit because it wasn't a big contributor anyway, but it was, and then it doubles your final evasion result, giving you a huge, huge jump to evasion. Next, we also have Queen of the Forest, which is right under it. Queen of the Forest is similar to Hyres, doesn't have a huge amount of evasion on the body armor, but then scales your move speed depending on your total evasion. So Queen of the Forest with Amazon can be very, very good because then if you don't need to have move speed on your boots. If you get a very good evasion helmet, evasion boots, damage on gloves, then you can stack up to around 30,000 evasion. With Amazon, it's pretty trivial. Then you get to apply Queen of the Forest, which will then give you up to 75% move speed. Gives you 25% as a base, and then 1% per 600 evasion rating, up to a maximum of 75% move speed total. This is huge, especially with the nerf to boots. So Essence of Horror got nerfed, so that 5% ruin is no longer getting doubled to 10%. It is now going to be 8%. And you can only run one of those runes anyway. So this increased effective socketables on boots got nerfed. You can only run one MS rune anyway. So somewhere in your perfect world now for boots, you're going to roll a 35% pair of boots. You're going to roll with it Essence of Horror. And then you're going to double corrupt it for probably socket and then move speed. 5% move speed. So total from the boots, you would have 48% on like a perfect pair of boots now. Ignoring some of the more specific cases of move speed on boots, like I think it was the Amannamu's Eye, which again caps at 40% anyway, so it's still less than that. But yeah, somewhere in the range of 40 to 45% is where you can expect like the really top tier boots to land. So 75% move speed from Queen of the Forest is, I'm not going to say a big deal, but it is a nice boost. The only downside is that Queen of the Forest will remove the effect of other move speed modifiers. It's really just the Queen of the Forest. So it's not super great if you have min-max gear. You can spec in some move speed into tree, get move speed on jewels. It's not great in those situations. So if you can manage like 20% move speed from the rest of your gear outside of your boots, then Queen of the Forest has less value. But anyway, that is to say that Stalking Panther pairs really well with Queen of the Forest and High Desire. And then, of course, chance to hit with attacks can exceed 100%. Gain additional crit chance equal to 25% of excess chance to hit with attacks. This means when you're getting a lot of accuracy and your hit chance is over 100%, you get more crit chance. And then Penetrate. Attacks using your weapons have added physical damage equal to 25% of the accuracy rating of the weapon. This is really, really nice, to be honest. Especially early league, maybe less so later league when you have T1 Merciless and T1 Flat Physical. But Penetrate in that early to mid league when you can get super high accuracy and it gives you a ton of base physical damage is really nice. So overall, there's very little that's bad with this Ascendancy. Okay, the Izmiri Brew is not the most impactful. Elemental Surges are getting buffed this league, but I still don't expect them to be that good. So that covers the Amazon. Deadeye getting a bit of a nerf. So this wind ward is not going to exist anymore, so that 3% less damage per tailwind. We are still going to be able to get tailwind, which is still going to give us move speed, evasion, skill speed, and just having it as part of your ascendancy to always have it procced is kind of wild. Called shots and then into bullseye. So instead of apply 5 critical weakness, they're buffing it to apply 10 critical weakness, which means that for something like, especially in the early league, when you're not going to have a good crit chance roll on your weapon, your 5% local crit chance, because like bows and stuff roll with 5% usually. I may have a bow around, question mark. So most martial weapons start with a base 5% crit chance. So like Widow Hail, Death's Harp, which is probably going to be popular this league. They start with a base 5% crit chance. 10 critical weakness. Each stack of critical weakness gives 0.5% crit chance. So 10 stacks gives you 5%, which effectively doubles your base crit chance, which is incredibly strong. That's why in 01, Eye of Winter was incredibly popular, because you can just instantly apply so much critical weakness to the enemy. Omen Scepter is still popular. Not as much, but still used, because the same thing. Enemies in your presence gain critical weakness. So, similar effect. Applying 10 critical weakness, especially for bows, where none of the bows have past 5%, I believe anyway. Past 5% base crit. This can double your crit chance, or give you even just 50% crit chance on an endgame crafted bow, which is incredibly strong. And then, of course, we have our close, or like shotgun or long shot, just general 1.2x multis, and fire an additional projectile. But overall, there's very little, again, similar to Amazon, very little bad about the Ascendancy. Depending on what exactly you're doing, you could shift into one or the other. They did talk about a new Ascendancy node to replace Windward, which is called the Mirage Archer. So it's going to be similar to the Spirit Gem, we assume anyway. It's going to be similar to the Spirit Gem, but it will have, it'll just be part of the Ascendancy. So instead of being triggered on a roll, it'll be part of the Ascendancy when you attack. To be determined how well that looks. I've dabbled with it as a Spirit Gem. Anyway, Blood Mage. Blood Mage is incredible because, as I just talked about with critical weakness for Deadeye, Blood Mage has a lot of spells have not so great base crit chance, which means that Blood Mage getting the crit chance of spells to 15% is massive. Is absolutely massive for just getting crits off. And like I mentioned before, with the Infernalist, critical damage is one of your main scalers for damage in the min-max territory. So just having a 15% base crit chance, and then being able to get a bunch of life from your chest piece, if you're running an ES chest piece, is super powerful too. Crimson Power. So we have the base crit chance is 15%. We have Crimson Power, and then if you're going like with more life stacking, you have increased critical damage bonus per 50 life here with Gore Spike. Generally, I would just go with Crimson Power. Crimson Power, Spell Leech, and base crit chance for spells. These are extremely strong nodes. So the Ascend is very, very powerful because spells that have like 7 to 9% base crit chance, you're effectively doubling that crit chance. So every single 1% point in your tree now becomes way more valuable for that increased critical hit chance for spells on the Blood Mage. So Blood Mage is incredibly powerful with Aziri's Acuity or just good life leech and some life regen nodes. You now no longer have to worry about mana as a resource, because if you go Blood Magic and just make everything spend in life costs, now you just hit an enemy, you leech it all back. You never really have to worry as much about resources as much as on other classes. Obviously, certain leagues have had some cheesier methods at not having to deal with costs of anything anyway, like Tech Rods in general, plus any life tap. Kind of trivialized that. We also had DeFi 2 last league with Constricting Command for attacks. So there were a few ways around it, but I can tell that GGG's aiming for the point where costs do still matter. So Again, Blood Mage is incredibly powerful in that respect. Next, we have Titan. Titan is simply here because there's always some super cheesy stuff that you can do with the increased effect of small passive nodes from hulking form. Also get a bit of life, and then there's some stuff that you can do with like slams, depending on if you go that route. So Titan's there for that. Some cheesy stuff, for example, has been with reduced skill effect duration. So you can do some shenanigans with reduced skill effect duration and hit quite a significant percentage like that. So that covers A tier. B tier, we have Tactician and Lich. So Tactician is very popular for banner botting. It's also very popular early in the league because of Watch How I Do It. Allies in your presence gain added attack damage equal to 25% of your main hand's weapon damage. Really, really popular as a group character early in the league. Banner plus Watch How I Do It for giving damage to your carry. But otherwise, I feel like it falls off a little bit. Projectile damage built pin is generally always a good move if you're playing solo. Like, pinned enemies cannot perform actions. The only thing is, this isn't really building damage so much as it's just, you know, it's as if you're freezing the enemy. And enemies have different pin thresholds than they do with elemental ailment thresholds. So it's generally easier to pin enemies than it is to freeze. And then you can do a few things where, like, you break armor on pin, which I believe is over here. Break 50% of armor on pinning an enemy, and then if you have 100% increased armor break, stuff like this, expose wounds, hits break 30% increased armor on targets with ailments, or there's just like break 20% increased armor. Like, you can buff up your armor break, buff up your effective fully broken armor. So as you pin, you break armor, it does give you a damage multiplier, but it does add to your survivability when you are pinning. So it is an interesting ascent. I just find that it's a little lacking. I do like the idea of embankment auras, to be honest, with strategic embankments, and this can also be used in party play. So if ever your tactician has their 4th ascend, you no longer need the Watch How I Do It anymore. Like, you have a good martial weapon, or you're doing it with spells, and then you can go with totems to give embankment auras as well. So it is more of a supportive class, which I think is fine. And in the end game, it is still decent. So again, tier list for end game, it's still decent. Lich, I saw a lot of people crying about Last Lament Lich. I'm very happy it got nerfed. I think it's amazing. So here we go. Lich has +1 on curse somewhere. You can apply an additional curse. Here it is. And curses you inflict have infinite duration. This is really popular for curse botting. Rupture the Soul. Curse enemies killed by you or by your allies, in your presence, have a 33% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of their maximum life as chaos damage. This is really fun for clearing purposes. We also have Necromantic Conduit. While you are not on low mana, you and allies in your presence have Unholy Might, which is effectively a gain 30% as chaos. And you can buff that further. So I was speaking with Paycheck. Paycheck was saying that it's not, I wouldn't say it's trivial, but it's not hard to reach around 5,000 max mana, which means that you will have 200% increased magnitude of Unholy Might buffs. So instead of gain 30% from Unholy Might, you will gain 90% from Unholy Might as extra chaos, which means that, half of your damage is going to be chaos in that range. Or just for solo purposes, Crystalline Phylactery is always really good. Getting a double effect of your main jewel is wild. So you get 1 Giga Jewel, 5 lines, 5-line jewel, and you just slot it in here. Huge, huge, huge. I made a good amount of currency last league selling minion jewels for Lich players. So having like good 5-line jewels, slot, and they buy them, slot them in here. Some will sell for like 150 divines. And you slot them in here. We also have Soulless Form, as well as Eternal Life. And the reason this is so popular is that part of the damage you take bypasses Energy Shield, which means it hits your life. Then, with Eternal Life, your life cannot change while you have Energy Shield, which means that all of that damage that bypasses and hits your life just poofs, vanishes. So this is a form of damage reduction where you just don't take that damage anymore. And this also gets paired with heavy buffer. 5% of damage taken bypasses energy shield with a nice big maximum energy shield boost. So that's like 15% damage reduction. That just all that damage just poofs. As long as you have energy shield, all that damage just poofs away, and it's great for defenses. Along with the Unholy Might and the Jewel and some other things, it's really good both as a support or even just for solo for tankiness. It's an amazingly popular class on hardcore as well for that reason. So Lich is up there. Obviously, when we're talking about like min-max, like Giga gear, you don't really you start getting better and better gear, and then the scaling in the tree is enough to support you, which is where stuff like Eternal Life and Soulless Form are less relevant at that point, and then other ascends will offer more offensive or just utility purposes. So it is in C tier or B tier. C tier: Smith of Katava, Invoker, Gemling, and Stormweaver. So Smith of Katava is getting a little bit of a buff. I'm not even sure how this is going to play out, to be honest. I kind of just had a gut feeling that it would be somewhere in C, maybe D tier. So Smith of Katava is changing. So you get more armor for each of those masterwork notables. You get more armor for these are the masterworks. So 200 base armor on whatever you're using, which again then gets scaled by all your armor percent in the tree. They removed the 75% each res, which I think for early game stuff, this was extremely popular to just hit your max res or very high res very quickly. And they instead made it increase glory gen, which might pair really well with bear form. Because a lot of those new shapeshift stuff have glory requirements. More Thorns damage, and I have seen Thorns builds, so this could be relevant too. Increased Spirit. This I'm not so sure is going to be as relevant. Now reduce 100% of critical damage taken, so now you are effectively immune to crits. Effectively. Actually, sorry, this is reduces by 100. Sorry, you're not immune to crits. If they have, let's say, 300% increased critical damage bonus, it'll effectively be 200. And now causes your body armor to grant the bonus of being unaffected by all damaging ailments, previously just ignite. So now you can be immune to ignite, bleed, and poison. So there are some interesting changes to this. It doesn't offer as much in the offensive form. Again, maybe if increased glory gen could be paired really well with bear form, it might be valuable. Fire spell on melee hit got a bit of a buff, so it doesn't cost any mana when being triggered, and has more damage now. So this could be, again, really nice. Speaking from experience with Mjolnir stuff, the damage, when you're not stacking spell percent, even the increased, like going double Mjolnir, so you have like plus 8 to your spell level, and the increased damage, still didn't feel that great for spells. So, to be determined how this feels. But I believe this might pair well with Volcano. Oh no, you can't actually put that in there. All right. Anyway, so my gut feeling is somewhere in the C range for Smith of Katava. I can definitely see something with Thorns or Glory Gen with Bear Form being relevant with Smith. And yep, next we have Invoker. Why is Invoker so low? I've been asked this question all week. The main reason that I am not as fond of Invoker, and it did get a little bit of a buff. So now we have the big buff here is that Soul Springs Eternal, your meta skills also have 50% reduced reservation. So, instead of 100 spirit for cast on crit, it is now 50 spirit for cast on crit, which is definitely a nice move. I don't feel like Spirit is as much of a bottleneck unless you are going to do like a Roa cast on crit, but generally you don't need both at the same time. So it could be set 1, set 2 situation. Next is that we have I am Thunder and I am Blizzard. So it's I am the Thunder, I am the Blizzard. Gain 10% of damage, extra cold damage. This got nerfed in 03. And I'll talk about that in a second, because we also have Sunder My Enemies. Critical hits ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistances, which, again, also got kind of nerfed in 03. What happened in 03? We released Heart of the Well, and we released Sunder My Enemies. Heart of the Well, I don't remember which character it's on. It's definitely not on this one. Heart of the Well. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Maybe have it around here. Here, this is my nice one. Heart of the Well. You can get double, gain 15% damage as lightning, damage as cold, with more nodes too. This is, I'm literally getting 50% more gain from a single jewel socket than I am from 4 ascend points. Half of your ascendancy points on Invoker. So that's what I mean by this is nerfed. And now there's also Rakiatas, which I don't know where I left my Rakiatas. I don't really care. But Rakiatas, if you are fighting enemies that have a lot of resistances, where this would be relevant, now Rakiatas makes that a multiplier for you, instead of you just ignoring the enemy's monster resistances. So, again, stuff like Arbiter, stuff like Zesh, Zarok, the Pinnacle bosses all have a good amount of res besides King of the Mist. Those all work in your favor with Rakiatas, big time. It becomes a multiplier, so Rakiatas has huge value. And then on maps with, monsters have plus 40% elemental resistances, again, it works in your favor with Rakiatas. And if your map doesn't roll that, then this node is useless anyway. So, Rakiatas and Heart of the Well just kind of trivialize like some of the biggest points of this ascend. Now, you still start in a very nice place. You'll see a lot of people starting on the Ranger side. Path over here anyway. So it is what it is. But I feel like it's, overshadowed by just itemization that you can get at this point. But maybe I'm wrong on that one. But yeah. Gemling, I feel like we're in somewhat of a similar situation. We have the big one to me is the +2 levels. And certain skills scale extremely well with levels. So that's where the +2 comes into play. Getting one charge, they buffed it to every 6 seconds. Doesn't feel great at all. Like, that's barely going to cover anything except maybe proccing charge reg, which is a little bit of a joke. It's like, okay, you're going to do 4 points on your ascend to proc charge reg. This, to me, is like one of the big pulls to Gemling, but these are all increased modifiers. So increased damage, increased skill speed, increased critical hit chance. These are all increases, which, again, like I said, are additive with other parts of the tree, while other ascends get multiplicative damage. You might consider that, the +2 is your multiplicative damage, but yeah. Gem-studded is also decent. Red, hits against you have no critical damage bonus. Blue, skills have 30% less cost. And green, 40% less move speed penalty from using skills while moving. So apparently, one of the devs confirmed that if you have equal numbers of each of the sport gems, all 3 of these can activate at the same time. So it is nice. You can be effectively immune to crits. You can have less cost and less move speed penalty. So there is still to me some value to the ascend. Infusion here can be really nice with getting tankier. I still would not spec this. My personal preference would just think gem-studded, efficiency, potential, and implanted gems would be my pick. And the increased effective attributes is, again, got slapped with the less attributes. So yeah, it's not as nice anymore. But yep, we have Gemling. Yeah, he's okay. My other problem is that I don't like the Merc start. it's too cluttered in that, like, okay, you have like one-handed dual wielding, you have low life, which again we don't really have good support for this anymore. We have break armor, we have banners, we have armor, we have evasion. Like there's just so much shoved into here, but that has very minimal synergy outside of like constricting command stuff, which was great to have two really nice clusters for constricting command. But yeah, it feels like at most you have like two clusters for whatever you're looking for here. And while other stuff like, okay, you have like proj damage, proj speed, like quiver bonus, like you're stacking on a whole bunch of synergistic nodes in these parts of the tree. While here on the merch side, it's not so great. So starting gemling, while I don't think the gemling ascendancy is bad, it's more, you end up pathing away from it, in my opinion. So yep, that's gemling. And Stormweaver I think is again overshadowed by the by Blood Mage, because like I said, crits are king, and you're not gonna guarantee crits for a lot of the spells with Stormweaver. They also nerfed Lightning Conduit, which hits Stormweaver a little hard. And that was the main way that people were scaling with Stormweaver in 0.3. As far as I was able to check. I don't play the Stormweaver. Next we have Chronomancer. Similar situation to Stormweaver. They nerfed Indigon. So while it might still be decent, if you don't know, the Indigon strat was to run Chronomancer, spend a bunch of mana with Indigon. Indigon buffs the damage based on how much you're spending, but also increases how much you spend based on how much you've spent recently. So, if you dumped 3,000 mana, with every other class, that's it, you're out of mana. With Chrono, you rewind time, and now you have a full mana bar again, and you do that again. You dump another 3,000 mana, and that keeps buffing Indigon. Indigon is heavily nerfed now, so while that strat might still be decent, it is heavily nerfed and is no longer going to be some like 300 million damage one-hit KO cannon with Chrono, which I think hits hard. Chrono still has a lot of viability as a support, but people tend to focus more on getting the rarity bot first, and then the banner bot, and then the curse bot or lich, which can also give you the unholy might, before they start worrying about time freeze Chrono assists. So I still think I find Chrono's in a weird spot. Lastly, we have Chalupa Monk. Oh my god, like what are they doing? I've talked at length about this, but I still think volatility kind of sucks. Volatility, if you don't know, also has an internal cooldown. So let's go and take one of the volatility nodes. Yeah. Volatility can be gained once every 0.1 seconds, and the default maximum for volatility stacks on you at once is 200. And the whole mechanic of volatility is incredibly clunky. So you have to build volatility stacks. If you have something like gain 1 volatility stack on crit, even if you crit 10 times a second, now you only gain 10 per second. So it'll take you 20 seconds to hit 200 stacks. Then, and again, the Ascendancy, similarly, gain 1 volatility on inflicting an elemental ailment, and this Ascend path also gives you some improvements to that. But anyway, so let's assume instead of crits, you're doing 1 volatility per ailment, and you're somehow applying 10 ailments a second. You're still in the same boat. It'll take you 20 seconds to build up your 200 volatility. After 4 seconds, it'll explode, dealing damage to you. Now, so you build up your 200 stacks, then you wait 4 seconds. So your downtime is a minimum of 24 seconds doing something like this to get your volatility buff. Your uptime, for 10 seconds after explosion, you will gain volatile power. So you have a 24-second downtime for a 10-second uptime. It is horribly bad and clunky. And again, you have to build this. It's something that it's not like you just have this on-off like elemental focus where just 1/3 of the time you have your preferred element. You actually have to deal with this. It's so frustrating. Volatility to me should either give way more value, I mean, still, like, gaining 1% of damage of chaos as for each volatility. So again, you can get 200% of a gain damage as chaos, which is pretty sizable. Not like that is a sizable buff, but it just feels like such a clunky mechanic to work around. There are some cheese builds that get around that and build volatility faster using empowers. I won't get into that here, but again, you're setting up like an entire set just to build volatility, which you then still have to wait to pop and then have your limited time window to kill the enemy in. It's not something that's great for mapping. It's definitely good for bossing. You can set up your volatility before the boss spawns, and or set it up while their damage reduction is starting to wear off. Have it pop, and you're good to go. So it might be really, really decent for a super early boss killer, but it's just such a clunky mechanic. We have chaos resistance is doubled. Like, okay, sure. Life leech recovers based on chaos damage as well as physical damage. Or sorry, leech recovers. This is probably one of the nicer ones in that there's some Zest lineage supports where you can, generate extra as chaos, which is always nice with this. So you don't have to go a pure chaos build. You can get against the darkness and Heart of the Well with gain as chaos. So there's ways to get some chaos damage, like more and more and more chaos damage built into your tree. There's also the Flames of Chayula you manifest are purple, so you can start getting some more gain as chaos here as well. So generally, like, you can, similar to what we did with Amazon, you can also just get a lot of leech, and both for physical and life and mana. Makes it really nice. This is probably to me the nicest part of the build. The Ascendancy. We have like Into the Breach, which again is just generating some remnants around the map for you to go pick up. So again, it's like we're talking clunky like multiple clunky mechanics to scale damage on this build. Darkness is kind of dog shit now. So yeah, like where it's just clunky mechanic on clunky mechanic. If they had just one more generalized damage that is more applicable to every scenario, I would say that this Ascend could really just scale to crazy levels. But the fact that both of the Ascendancy damage scalers are very, very clunky mechanics, like you're running around picking up flames, or you're building up volatility, like, okay, in mapping you probably decent, and in bossing not so great. Anyway, it becomes annoying in my opinion. Oh, Chalupa in rank F, because it's just everything just feels so clunky with it. And yeah, and obviously we have Unascended, and then we have our savior, Witch Hunter tier. Yes, our savior, Witch Hunter, the best, as E-Wave puts it, that I had a bad take saying Witch Hunter was bad. He must be absolutely right that Witch Hunter is amazing, because I see everyone playing it. It's everywhere, like absolutely everywhere. Just like, I don't know. It's such an amazing Ascend that a whole 2% of players are playing it. And then again, if you look at their ascendancies, like nobody is taking the weapon master, the weapon swap points. It's kind of funny, to be honest, how bad this Ascend is. So let's talk about why it's bad. It did get buffed, so that is one thing. But I'll talk about why the buffs still just feel awkward. All right, let's say first of all, if you don't know, Witch Hunter has this Ascendancy node. 100 passive skill points become a weapon set skill points, meaning you effectively have 124 just weapon swap points. You can have fully one tree in set 1 and a full other tree in set 2. Why is this bad? So the reason this is bad is because GGG doesn't let us path through jewel sockets with weapon set points. So, and now PoB actually updated it. And I know when GGG announced this, PoB did not have this, which may be why there was a lot more hype for it than you really should be able to have for this Ascend. But you cannot path through jewel sockets, which means that when you have nodes like, I'm going to spec all the way over here. When you have nodes like, let's say you're coming over for Giant's Blood. Again, you can't spec this as a set point. So it has to be allocated to your generalized set for your keystones. And then you come up here. Oh, I want to set the rest of this on set 1. So I want to come in and take Crushing Verdict. I want to come in and take Unforgiving. Wait. And for some reason, POB lets you spec this. But POB bugged. But yeah, you cannot spec this jewel socket with set 1. That means Unforgiving is just not possible to take. How do you get to, let's say, Singular Purpose? Oh, jewel socket blocks it. You can't come around here because the jewel socket blocks that path. And then now you're starting to realize just how clunky it is. So while normally this would be 8 points if you could spec through the jewel socket, now you have to spec up through here, 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 up through here, then up through here, strength, come up through here, and how many points did that take? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We literally doubled how many points it will take to get to Singular Purpose with our weapon swap points with Witch Hunter. Again, this whole thing of, oh, you can have like 2 completely different builds kind of works until it doesn't, because it doesn't work. And yeah. This is the first thing. The second thing, and what actually got buffed, is Sork Ward. 35% less armor and evasion rating, and you get Sork Ward, which converts that armor and evasion that you're losing to a shield. This shield, 0.3 and prior, only worked on elemental damage, so it was kind of dog shit because big physical hits were some of the most dangerous hits in the game, and you're reducing your armor and evasion, which are, your core ways at this part of the tree to mitigate that for elemental damage, which you have resistances to help with anyway. They did buff that, which is nice. They did at least buff Sork Ward, so now it applies to, I believe, all damage. So, yeah, so now you can actually protect against physical and chaos. So this now suddenly becomes a little bit more interesting. So now you have now for your Witch Hunter Ascendancy, you're building, what is it? Energy Shield. Yes, that's right. Now you are effectively just building Energy Shield. Your Ascend points are converting other defenses to Energy Shield for 4 points. It's wild. It is absolutely wild how bad this design is. Now, on one hand, you don't have ES nodes down here, so you can at least get effectively ES down here now with Ablution, and ES is very strong. The other part that is also somewhat decent, and again, it actually functions similar to ES with like recovery delays and stuff like that. So the other thing is that you can scale your armor and evasion to scale your effective ES. But what this 35% less armor and evasion, if you remember from before when I said more is a multiplier and increased is a additive, reduced is additive and less is a multiplicative reduction. So this 35% less is a huge hit. And if you look at the armor formula, armor is something that works incredibly well. The more you get, the more you buy, the more you save, which is frankly true with armor. Evasion rating is working in the opposite direction where evasion has diminishing returns. So if you're in a situation where you somehow have like 40,000 evasion rating with Witch Hunter, then sure, this Sork Ward is probably really good because now you build up a nice shield. It will apply to just about everything, and you still will have 30k plus, or sorry, like 25k plus evasion rating, which is still around 65-70% evade chance, which is decent. So, like, but again, that's a huge investment into defenses, only for it to get like cut by 35% to effectively exchange that to ES as a whole ascendancy tree. And and then the other thing that I really dislike is you have Culling Strike and Decimating Strike for 4 points, Culling Strike is something that you can get on a support gem. We have multiple other sources of Culling Strike as well, like Lightning Warp. Like I mentioned, we have the support gem. There's gloves with Culling Strike. I don't know if there's other places with Culling Strike. Some skills just innately have Culling Strike. So this, for 2 points, is wild to me. Like, the fact that Culling Strike is even a node here is wild to me. Next, we have Decimating Strike. Decimating Strike is this ultra awkward thing where you roll, like, between 5 and, I think it's 25, 30% of the max life off of the monster. It's the first time you hit them. Sure, for bossing, if you roll a 30%, it'll probably feel really good. And then the next time you see the same boss, you roll a 5%, and you're going, holy shit, this is inconsistent as all hell. Decimating Strike can also be obtained from gloves, so if you really wanted Decimating Strike, you could either replace your gloves or spend 4 of your Ascendancy points getting Judge, Jury, and Executioner. And all of this is that neither Culling nor Decimating actually increase your damage. They just, add in a little bit. You just have to deal a little less damage to the monster to kill it. Which ends up really awkward when you're fighting a unique and you hit 5% on your Decimating. Your Culling Strike is only worth 5%. That means you still have to hit 90% of the life of the monster. Now you're... So this is honestly useless. Like, I figure that most people are going to go Sorkward and Witchbane with No Mercy. Deal up to 40% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. Anyway, just know that as you damage the enemy, the concentration goes down. And then you will eventually hit 40%. So, similar to Amazon, this is not always applied. If you can constantly be hitting them, yes, you can remove their concentration and just deal 40% more damage for the rest of the fight. And that happens around at the 70% health mark, I believe, with the new buff. So, yeah, you have to deal 30% of their health with less multiplier to deal more damage for the rest of the fight. Like, it's decent. It's a decent multiplier, I guess, but yeah, that's about it. And in other words, we have Zealous Inquisition. 10% chance for enemies you kill, remember, you, not you or your allies, to explode, dealing 100% of their maximum life as physical damage. What was it that I said about Lich? Cursed enemies killed by you or by your allies in your presence have a 33% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of their max life as chaos damage. Kind of funny that we have a better chance, and this also works with allies in your presence as well. If you run minions or you're running in a party, Rupture the Soul happens, but then here it's like just for you. That's it. I don't know. I think the whole Ascend needs to be taken back, recooked. I think it's dog shit. And yeah, I don't really trust anybody. Obviously, we have the new Ascendancies. I am not going to talk to that. We only have some leaks, and we don't even have all the nodes anyway. Some of the things to really look out for: the Bonded Ruins on Shaman. One of them gave local crit chance, which is incredibly strong. So remember how I said even like a perfect non-sanctified bow would be at 10%, so 5% base plus 5% on the suffix. The Bonded Ruin gave, I think, like 1.1%. Which gives you effectively 11% more crit chance in your entire build. So that looked pretty strong. So some of the Bonded Ruins might be absolutely wild with Shaman. What do they call it? There was one of the Ascendancy nodes allowed you to convert physical damage taken to elemental and also build up more and more effective resistances or mitigation against elemental, which also looked really nice. I actually think the rage casting is a little bit of a bait, but we're gonna see on what we can do with, like, if we can generate a lot of rage and how to spend it. And then we have the Oracle. The Oracle is gonna have its like a whole skill tree just to himself, which just sounds wild. He has some abilities that look like they might be really good for support purposes. So we'll see with Oracle. Again, similar situation to Shaman. Like, we're going to have to see what the... when I talk about the Bonded Ruins, we're going to have to see what the extra skill tree looks like. There might be some absolutely wild combinations that we can make with the hidden skill tree. Too early to tell. We don't know what it looks like. Stick around on stream. I'll obviously be looking at that once those come out. You might be asking, Glitched, Why is Mercenary above Witch Hunter? Why are the unascended classes above Witch Hunter? Especially the Mercenary, because, you know, it leads into Witch Hunter. And my response to that is that Mercenary has potential. You can build into a gem league. You can build into a tactician. As soon as you ascend to Witch Hunter, you lost that potential. So yeah, that's it. Like, I think Witch Hunter's off. So, all right. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's meant more as a meme. Again, I did try and go. I was serious in evaluating things, but Witch Hunter sucks, and I hope GGG buffs it because it was my first ever character, and it looks cool. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed. See you on the next video. And see you on League Start in like less than 48 hours. So have fun and yeah.